صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى آل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة، ويا باب نجاة الأمة، قريب يا مظلوم كربلاء، سيدي يا أبا عبد الله، لأندبنك صباحا ومساء، ولأبكين عليك بدل الدموع دمع، وجه الصباح علي ليل مظلم، وربيع أيام علي محرم، والليل يشهد لي بأني ساهر، إن طاب للناس الرقايات وهونوا، ما خلت أن الدهر من عاداته تروى الكلاب به، ويضمى الضيغم، ويقدم الأموي وهو مؤخر، ويؤخر العلوي وهو مقدم، مثل ابن فاطمة يبيت مشردا، ويزيد في لذاته متنعم، لولا القضاء لمحى الوجود بسيفه، والله يقضي ما يشاء ويحكم. هذه ليلة العليلة، ترى ما حال العليلة حينما رأت الدار خالية، يا دار نشتيج عن نهاليج، يا دار وين حسين راعيج، كم وافد وقاصد اليلفيج، وين البطل عباس شيك يا دار عزيني وعزيك يا دار وين حسين راعيك سيدي يا أبا عبد الله يا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال مولانا أبو عبد الله عليه السلام وأني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما إنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي. Please enlighten this majlis with 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Every year we gather to commemorate and remember this great movement, this movement of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. We try to mourn Imam Hussain and learn from the movement that he started. And when we read into the books of the Islamic scholars, whether it be our scholars or the scholars of other schools of thought, or even non-Muslim scholars, the way that they analyze this movement of Imam Hussain, we find so many different analyses written of why did Imam al-Hussain rise? Why did he move? Why did he take the family with him? Why did he take the children? Why did he take the ladies? And why did he go to Mecca? Then from Mecca he went to Iraq. We see so many different analyses written. And what was the motive behind his movement? Some we find they mention the motive was political. For Imam al-Hussain had the right to become the Khalifa, and he saw Yazid being Khalifa, and Yazid does not deserve this, therefore he moved against Yazid to take his right in a political sense. And this is why usually we find some refer to the movement of Imam al-Hussain as the term revolution, because they see it in that sense, the sense of politics. Others see it in the sense that he saw that the message of Rasulullah is being played with, in the sense that he is the only Imam to face a Khalifa who is publicly committing indecent acts. Therefore, this was a motive for Imam to not pay allegiance to the Khalifa of his time and move against him. Others we find, no, the motive that made Imam al-Hussain head towards Iraq was the letters that the Kufans sent to him. Therefore, he saw that he has a good number of supporters, that is possible for him to actually move and rise against Yazid and for him to take the Khilafah. So we see different analyses written. Today, we will try to analyze and assess one of the letters that Imam al-Hussain wrote, which he wrote before even moving to Mecca, before leaving Medina. That letter is core and essential to understanding the movement of Imam al-Hussain. Whether we want to take it from a political point of view, from religious, from social, it's up to you. But this letter, we need to analyze it to understand the real motive behind the movement of Imam al-Hussain. Imam al-Hussain, before he leaves Medina, he left Medina on the 27th of Rajab. And we can count from Rajab all the way to Muharram. On the 27th of Rajab, he left Medina. Before he leaves Medina, he wrote a will, a letter to his brother, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafi. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafi was in Medina. Imam al-Hussain wrote a letter to him. telling him the reason behind his movement, behind him leaving Medina. Why is he leaving Medina? Here Imam al-Hussain would tell Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, he will first of all mention in the letter that he believes in Allah and that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah and that Quran is the book of Allah and so on. After that, the main part of the will or the message or the letter is this part that we started the message with, where Imam al-Hussain would tell, وَإِنِّي, after praising Allah and the Prophet, he says, وَإِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا. So I did not leave, I did not move or rise to cause havoc or out of arrogance. وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا, and not to cause injustice or not to cause chaos. This is not the reason behind my movement. Then he describes the reason. He says, وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ. Innama in the Arabic language means exclusivity. Exclusively, the reason behind my movement, خرجت لطلب الإصلاح, seeking إصلاح, reform, to revive what? Reform what? طلب الإصلاح في أمتي جدي, seeking to revive the spirit of my grandfather's nation. أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف. I want to seek enjoining good, وأنهى عن المنكر, and forbid evil, and follow the teachings of my grandfather Rasulullah and my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. This was the letter that Imam al-Hussain, or the will that Imam al-Hussain wrote to his brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah before he leaves Medina, and he sealed that will. Now what do we understand from this? When the Imam sealed it and he wrote it in these details, it doesn't mean that he's writing it for his brother simply. It's not a letter for his brother only. It's a public letter. It's a letter for anyone who asks you, "Oh, Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, show him this. I have sealed it." So it's a public statement. Now, let's look at the term islah, the term reform or reviving the spirit of my grandfather's nation. One time, I want to cause a change. My movement is a movement of change. I want to change the society. This is basically taking the society from one state and turning it into another state without looking at the past of the society. I have a goal. I want to make my society and turn it into the next society. I want to change it. This is called change. And usually, politically speaking, they would call such movements revolution. I cause a revolution and I change the system to something new, irrespective of the past. The Imam said islah. Islah means to fix, to revive. It means that there was something, there is something. This thing, this movement went off track, and then the Imam wanted to bring it back to track. This is the meaning of islah. The meaning of to want to revive something. So the Imam kept in mind, the Prophet came, he delivered a message. This message went off track after the Prophet. The Imam wants to bring it back to track. It's not a revolution. It's revival. It's reviving the message. It's reforming the current state of the community. So the Imam said islah. This is the meaning of islah. Now, this was clear. This is the motive of the Imam. Now, was the motive to overthrow Yazid or no? And for the Imam himself to be the Khalifa? If that was the case, then we can understand, for example, when they say the letters of the Ahl al-Kufa were a strong motive. Because when they sent him the letters, now he saw that he has an army, therefore he can overthrow Yazid. However, this letter that he wrote to Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, when did we say he wrote it? 27th of Rajab. When did the first batch of the letters arrive to Imam al-Hussain, the letters of Ahl al-Kufa? It was on the 10th of Shahr Ramadan. So a month and a half after Imam wrote that letter to Muhammad ibn al-Hanafi, that will Basir. Which means the real motive for the movement of the Imam was not the letters of Ahl al-Kufa. In fact, the Imam was aware of the state of the people of Kufa. And usually, it is the people of Kufa that are blamed. They say they wrote him the letters, he came, they didn't aid him, therefore, they are the reason behind his death. Now last year, if those who attended remember, we had a whole lecture about the state of the people of Kufa. And we described that Kufa in general was not a Shia city. Part of it was Shia, but the majority were not Shia. In fact, the Imam was in Medina, and he made a public statement that he's moving against Yazid. How many people left Medina and came with the Imam? The Imam, even in this letter, he says, he who follows me through the truth, then Allah is more worthy of the truth, and he who doesn't follow me, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge between us on the day of judgment. So he even called the people of Medina. How many people from Medina came with the Prophet? Why don't we blame the people of Medina? The Prophet went to Mecca for Hajj. Then he ended up leaving Mecca. And his language was clear that he's moving against Yazid. How many people from Mecca went with the Prophet? Very few. Same thing, why don't we blame the people of Mecca in that case? The blame is on the entire Islamic Ummah. This is why the Prophet, the Imam said, he wants to perform a salah upon the entire Ummah. Ummati Jaddi. The blame is on the entire Islamic Ummah. How did it reach to such a state? So the motive was not the letters of the people of Kufa that made him move towards Iraq. He had this in mind from day one. He wrote this from Medina. مَا خَرَجْتُ أَشْرًا وَلَا بَطَرًا. So this was the main motive. Now if we say this is the main motive, we said that the society was moving according to the message of Rasulullah, then it went off track. What is it, the state of society that the Imam wanted to fix? Let's try to analyze the state of the society. How was it? What did it reach to that the Imam wanted to bring it back? What happened to the message of Rasulullah? Here we have Islamic paradigm, the Muhammad paradigm of the message of Islam. Then we have the Umayyad paradigm. The Imam wanted to take the Umayyad paradigm, the message from the Umayyad paradigm, and put it back to the Muhammadi paradigm. So what was the features of the Umayyad paradigm? To really understand it, we need to understand the state of the Umayyads generally. In general, if we look at history, we find that the Umayyads had some form of envy against the Hashemites, Bani Hashim. Now Umayyads, they go back, and the Hashemites, all of them go back to one grandfather. His name was Abdul Manaf. Abdul Manaf had two sons. He had more than two, but the main two that we are focusing on was Abd Shams and Hashim. Hashim is the grandfather of Bani Hashim. Abd Shams had a son by the name of Umayyah, who is the grandfather of Bani Umayyah. Umayyah had Abu Sufyan had Muawiyah had Yazid, and so on. When when Bani Hashim started or gained the governance under the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the power became under them. Now all of Quraysh respect Bani Hashim. Here, the Umayyads didn't like it. How come the Hashemites are respected and we are not? And this thing became, this envy, we can see in their words, in the words of Abu Sufyan, in the words of Muawiyah, in the words of Yazid. There are many historical accounts that we can see that their language is a language of envy towards Bani Hashim. I'll give you an example. For example, Yazid is narrated to have said, لعبت هاشم بالملك. لعبت هاشم بالملك meaning the Hashemites have played with power. Then he would say, لا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. There is no message that has arrived and there is no revelation that descended upon the Prophet. It's just a game of power. This is how Yazid viewed it. Where did this view come from? How did he view the Hashemites this way? This was not the general view of the society of the Muslims. This is the Khalifa of the Muslimin, and he views Rasulullah this way. He views Rasulullah as somebody who brought this message to gain power. That's it. This is the Umayyad paradigm. Another example. Somebody would come to Muawiyah, and he was fond of Muawiyah. He used to respect Muawiyah. He came back from Muawiyah's majlis, back to his home. His son saw him, he was a bit distressed, this companion of Muawiyah. His son told him, "Oh my father, what happened? You don't look good today." He said, "Today in the majlis of Muawiyah, he said something that made me worried." So the son told his father, "What did he tell you?" He said, "I told Muawiyah, now the power is with you. It is in your interest to strengthen the relation with the Hashemites. Leave what is behind. Leave all of those, or the envy, or the hatred. The power is with you. Fix the relation with the Hashemites. That will benefit you." Here, Muawiyah would tell his companion, "No way." Why did he say that? He would keep on explaining. He would say, "We saw. The first came, he became the Khalifa, he died, and now nobody remembers him. The second came, he became Khalifa, he died, nobody remembers him. The third, who is our brother, because Uthman was related to Muawiyah. The third, who was our brother, he came, he ruled, he died, and now nobody remembers his name on the pulpits. However, Muhammad, he died until today, every time, 5 times a day, we have to say, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." Muawiyah then said, "Dafnan, Dafnan. This name, I want to bury it." This is the Umayyad paradigm. This is what Imam Hussain wanted to change, to bring back, to take away Islam from Sunnah. So, this is the first feature of the Umayyad paradigm. What is the second feature? Let's see what was the state of society. Islam views the individuals as equals in the eyes of Allah. And the only thing that makes us better than each other is taqwa. As the ayah says, "Inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum." The most, the highest in the eyes of Allah amongst you is those who are the most pious, the most God conscious. This is the view of Islam. And we have narrations by Rasulullah where he says that the Islamic community is like a body. If one of the body parts aches, the other body parts will help that. In other words, we are all one body. If one of our societies are that goes through a difficulty or a problem, we go and try and aid that society. Do our best to aid it. This is how Rasulullah wanted us to view each other. As for the Umayyads, they pushed the idea of individualism. Why care about others? Think of yourself. And they would quote certain Quranic verses or misquote them. They would say, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا عَلَيْكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ لَا يَضُرُّكُمْ مَنْ ضَلَّ. O those who believe, focus on yourselves. Those who become deviant is nothing to do with you. They would misquote this verse. So they changed the mentality of the society. Everyone started to think of themselves. Amr bil Ma'ruf is put it aside. Nahi al Munkar, put it aside. Why? In that case, there will be no one who will come out and will ask Muawiyah, why did you do this? And ask the people of the governance, why did you do this? So they promoted individualism through misquoting Quranic verses. This is another feature of the Umayyad paradigm. A third feature was to belittle the image of Rasulullah, which we mentioned. Muawiyah tried to bury the image of Rasulullah. How did they do so? Whenever you read a riwayah, a narration, that has a certain meaning that you see does not fit the status of Rasulullah. Rasulullah, for example, some narrations has Rasulullah had some suicidal thoughts. Rasulullah would enjoy a bit of music here and there. Rasulullah seeing somebody's wife and then wishing that he can marry her. Things like that. Whenever we read such narration, 99.9% of the time, it is an Umayyad fabrication. They try to belittle the image of the Prophet. And this is why some of these narrations, we still find them today in other schools of thought. They view the Prophet as someone who is a normal human being, who can commit mistakes, he has his desires. This is separate from the delivering the message part. Delivering the message part, he is infallible. His daily life part, no, he can commit mistakes, he's like one of us. In fact, there is one narration, it's really funny. They say that Rasulullah woke up in the morning, and I'm sorry to bring this, but this is in the books. They say that Rasulullah woke up in the morning, he was under the state of janaba. He forgot to perform ghusl and he went and prayed. Then he remembered afterwards. Ajib. This was the Umayyad paradigm. This is how they belittled the image of Rasulullah and his holy household. For example, Amir al-Mu'mineen, they had a policy. Every pulpit, every speech given on a pulpit, they must curse Amir al-Mu'mineen in that speech. It's part of the Jum'ah prayer. The Jum'ah, the speech. Every Jum'ah speech, Amir al-Mu'mineen name needs to be cursed. To the point that when the news of the killing of Amir al-Mu'mineen reached, Amir al-Mu'mineen was killed in the state of Salah. When the news of Amir al-Mu'mineen being killed reached to the people of Sham, some of them said, وَكَانَ عَلِيًّا يُصَلِّي? Did Ali pray? They were surprised. So what image was portrayed about Amir al-Mu'mineen that he doesn't even pray? Imam al-Hassan, they made him a person who gets married a lot and divorces a lot. Marries and divorces to the point that some of the narrations reached that Imam al-Hassan has married hundreds of wives. When did he have the time? So it's a campaign to belittle the image of Ahlul Bayt. This is the third feature. Another feature is to play with the beliefs of the people. Insert certain points of aqa'id, certain belief ideas that benefits the governments. Like what? Like, for example, the belief of qada and qadar. Everything is predestined. and they would quote the verses that everything is written. Why did they insert this idea? By the way, this idea still have its effects today. We are affected by the Umayyad inserting this idea into the Muslim world. Because every problem we fall into, somebody gets divorced, he said, this is what Allah has written for me. Oh, don't blame Allah, you chose the wrong person. This idea, everything. Yes, we have the idea that Allah writes things for us, but not in this way. Not in the way that it is predestined, that Allah forced you to be in that situation. No, you chose to. We have this idea in our culture, we say, qada, qada. No. This traces back to the Umayyads. The Umayyads inserted this so that whenever someone would have any issue with the government, with Muawiyah, with Yazid, they would tell them, qada or qadar. This is how Allah wrote things. To the point that Yazid, when he saw Imam al-Sajjad in the courtyard, when they came to Sham, what did he tell Imam al-Sajjad? He said, يُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ يَشَاءُ. He gives the mulk, the power, to whomever he wants, and he takes power from whomever he wants. So he views all of these verses in this sense, in the sense that Allah decides to. You can't do much. Allah decided that I am the Khalifa. You can't do much. You have to accept it. This is how they played with the beliefs of the people. How did they do so? You know how nowadays we have Hollywood, or movies, series, the TV, media. The media back then, one of the main tools of their media was a form of storytelling. They had their form of cafes. They would gather, and then somebody in that cafe would give them stories. And in those stories, some of them are fictional, some of them, they play with reality. So they would insert all of these stories about Rasulullah, they would insert this idea of jabr, of predestination, in this way. This was their media tool. In Syria, they call it hakawati, the person who gives the stories, the storytelling. So this was the state of the Umayyads. This was the paradigm. Up until it reached to a point where the Khalifa of the Muslimin, the one who claims to be divinely chosen by Allah to be the leader of the Muslimin, is someone who publicly commits indecent act, publicly drinks alcohol. What state did the Muslim Ummah reach? That the person who claims to be their Khalifa is of such qualities. This is the Umayyad paradigm. Imam al-Hussain, when he said, I want to revive the spirit of the message of my grandfather, of the Ummah of my grandfather, he wants to take it away from the Umayyad paradigm and put it back, and I emphasize, put it back, not put it in a new picture, put it back into the Muhammadi paradigm. This is why when we read that letter he wrote to Muhammad bin Hanafiya, what did he say after? He said, I want to enjoin good, A'mur bil Ma'ruf. Why? Because the community was too individualistic. وَأَنْهَى عَنَ الْمُنْكَرِ, and forbid that which is evil. Because evil was being spread everywhere. The Khalifa himself is doing evil. Then what did he say? He said, and I follow the teachings of my grandfather Rasulullah and the teachings of my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. Meaning I want to take everything back to the right track. This was the main motive that made the Imam Hussain move. Now this, you want to interpret it in a political sense, interpret it in a social sense, in a religious sense, it's up to you. You can go and do the research. But this idea of Islah, idea of reviving the message of Rasulullah is the core. And we need to understand as well and keep in mind that reviving the message of Rasulullah He is an imam. Rasulullah has told us to follow this person, meaning that his actions are divinely guided actions. It's a divinely chosen path for Imam Hussain to rise. This also need to understand. If we keep these points in mind, I can now, inshallah, move into the Arabic part of the lecture after the Salat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.